called Don't Listen to Anything the Lizard King Tells You. It's on page 9. Don't expect this to turn into one of those postmodern, like Tim O'Brien type stories where I tell you toward the end how none of what I said really happened, but the story is still, nevertheless, still true because of the intrinsic moral message or insight into the human condition or the nature of narrative that it offers. No, everything I'm about to tell you here actually happened. My father, who is also involved in the events I'm about to describe, always prefaces his version of this story with an explanation that serves to assert its ultimate truth. Page 10. But also welcomes his listeners to willfully suspend their disbelief and accept the story as it is. Hence the reason I always tell anyone I'm telling this story to right up front of its unbelievable nature and unlikely subject and invite them to make of it what they want and what they will. So here you go. And as unbelievable as it might sound, when I was 6 years old, Jim Morrison worked at my father's auto body shop and attempted to mentor me in the art of romance and guide me through my first and only vision quest. My father's shop during the summer of 1985 was like a cross between Rick's Cafe in Casablanca and Colonel Kurtz's Cambodian compound in Apocalypse Now. It was a place of barely controlled anarchy and looming madness, visited and staffed by an assortment of borderline psychotics, barely functioning sociopaths, slack-jawed junkies, 60s washouts, motor-mouthed cokeheads, boneheaded stoners, and screaming lunatics from all walks of middle-class Cape Cod life. While my father often tried haplessly to bring some measure of order and reason to the near constant madness and chaos that pervaded the place, he usually wound up on any given afternoon either laughing hysterically, biting his fist until it bled, or laying on the floor with his hands over his face, mumbling, "I should have stayed at the seminary," or "I should have just gone to Vietnam," over and over. So one morning, a guy in leather pants with long hair and a thick brown beard came in the office. My father's receptionist had overdosed the night before on Valium and cocaine, hence I was tasked with answering the phones for the rest of the week, and asked to see the hiring manager. I asked him who that was. We stared at each other in mutual confusion for a moment before he asked, "Who's in charge here?" My father came into the office just then, and the guy asked him if he was hiring. My father smiled and asked if he had any experience preparing cars. The guy stared off for a moment and then mumbled, "Not a bit." Now, if this guy was dealing with any other auto body shop owner in the world, this comment would have led to an immediate employment rejection. But for some reason, and this wasn't the first time he decided to hire someone right on the spot without any qualification for a job, sometimes he just had a feeling about a prospective employee and gave him a chance, which often led to a fist fight and or the intervention of law enforcement within a week. My father took the guy upstairs to work something out. Half an hour later, they came down holding beer cans and snickering. My father showed the guy to his workstation, smiled to himself with an expression of real wonder and self-satisfaction, and waved me over. "You realize who that is, right?" he whispered. "Nope." "That's Jim Morrison from The Doors." "The Doors?" "Oh, he's a famous rock star." "Why is he working here?" My father looked at me as if I was the stupidest child on the planet, because he's supposed to be dead. Why else would he? Within Jim's first week at work, my father and I had become completely enamored with him. Jim spent his mornings, lunch breaks, and most of his afternoons regaling us with tales and anecdotes from his life. He told us the details of how he faked his death in Paris almost 15 years before, and all sorts of stories about dropping acid with Allen Ginsberg, shooting up and shooting guns with William Burroughs, roaming the streets of London addicted to crank, studying and lecturing on the subject of deconstruction with Derrida in Paris, managing garage bands outside of Dublin, working as a park ranger in the Northwest, founding and quickly abandoning a UFO cult in New Jersey, running coke off the coast of South Florida, and meeting the spirit of William Blake out on the astral plane with a group of Aztec mystics he met outside of Mexico City. While Jim could disguise who he once was, he told us that he was no longer Jim and didn't want to be called that. He was now the Lizard King. As much an entity, a mythological figure really, a psychic legend and spiritual outlaw, as a man. I've evolved beyond the confines of my flesh. I've become a walking myth. My father nodded along with all this and said, "I understand exactly what you mean," and winked at me. I spent most of those summer mornings hanging around the Lizard King's work booth, listening to his stories and considering his advice. My father believed he was a good influence on me, and in many respects he was. Sure, he made mistakes and wasn't really equipped to mentor or watch over an impressionable 6-year-old. However, the Lizard King possessed a sort of intrinsic wisdom and worldliness from which my father seemed to think I could learn. So one day I went to the Lizard King with a problem I was having with a girl from kindergarten I was in. "Tell the Lizard King everything, brother. Is she knocked up?" Don't take responsibility until they do a blood test on the desk. I told them how she, her name was Tiffany, rejected my invitation to a play date. Are you looking to just shag her or like commune with her? Is this about getting between her legs or between her lobes? I don't know what some of those words mean. Jim raised his sunglasses, eyed me closely and said, they aim for a contextual understanding. I don't know what contextual means. Try this. Are you looking to just sleep with her or be with her? I want her to come over to my house. I don't want to go to hers. I bet it smells like pee there. Tiffany was the daughter of my mother's gynecologist, hence I was certain her house would smell like pee. Listen, all chicks love poems. Poetry tickles clits. Write her a poem. Tell her who you are and what you feel. Don't hold back. Put your cock and balls out there and let her do the sucking and fucking. I took his advice and wrote Tiffany a simile, comparing her hair to the color of the sun and her eyes to the visceral effects of a rainbow. I showed the Lizard King a draft, and he told me he was contrived, heartless, and dead. He went out to his car and came back with a volume of Lord Byron's poetry and told me to write Tiffany a poem in the style of Byron. So I wrote her a poem broken into 5 long cantos about death and misery. I called it Ugly Death, Love, and Venice. The Lizard King praised it for its starkness and depravity, and I gave it to her a few days later at a friend's birthday party. She took one look at it, crumpled it up, punched me in the stomach, and told me to leave her alone. The next day, I went back to the Lizard King and told him what happened. He stared up into the fluorescent lights over his work booth for the longest time. Looking back, I realized he might have been having a seizure. Finally, he said, fucking take a walk on it, man. Be true to your words, to your soul. There's more pussy and ass out there than you can ever imagine. Forget that fucking kind of deep rip. I told him I didn't want to be alone and without a girlfriend. But we're all alone, man. We're all lonely creatures on a lonely world floating through a lonely fucking universe, forever into a lonely fucking oblivion. There's no fate, no destiny, no eternal reward waiting for any of us. There's just nothingness. There's just the eternal fucking void. I asked him if there was a heaven or a hell. You're living in both of them now simultaneously, he said. I asked him if that meant I was dead and what simultaneously meant. We're all already dead. We're like living in heaven and hell at once. But we're standing right here. We think we are. But we are. Listen to me. We just think we are. I don't get it. That's Descartes. It's in the mold of Descartes. Who's that? Philosopher. I think, therefore I am. He said that. He meant that, we only think ourselves into existence. It's all really a matter of perception. Like if a true cat crashes in a forest and no one can hear it, does it really make a sound? Sure. Okay, but how do you know that? But wouldn't it? But no one would know that if someone wasn't there to hear it. Oh. You see what I'm saying here? It's just that there's no one there to hear the sound of the tree. It still makes noise. Okay, you're getting technical. You need to expand your consciousness beyond these enlightenment, Victorian ways of thinking. How? You need to enter upon, unto, that sounds better. Unto another plane of existence. How do I do that? Try meditation. Pray to the snake gods. Experiment with chemicals. Drop in and drop out. Try some acid, or better yet, try some mescaline, or quickie. Where do I get those? Fuck you. You're not taking mine. Find your own. I'm not selling anymore. What are they? They're too heavy for you at this stage. You'll just freak out on them and start babbling foolishness and jacking off like a coked-up monkey. He suggested I stop by drinking beer. I told him I wasn't allowed to drink beer. He shook his head sadly and said, exactly. You're not allowed to. No, little brother. You don't allow yourself. My mom doesn't. Then your mom is oppressing you. She's trying to fit you in a square peg when you're shaped like a pentagon. You need to go on a vision quest. What's that? He offered to hit off a cigarette, but I declined. It's a journey towards spiritual enlightenment and higher thought. I asked him what that would do. It'll fucking expand your mind unto realms you can't even fucking imagine. What does that mean? It means you're asking the right question, but not listening to the right answers. I will be your guide on this process. Thanks. You're welcome. Where do we start? First, you need to stop being you. Evolve. Transmigrate your essence. Expand your spirit. Do that, and from the husk of you and your pale, dead flesh shall be born, shall rise the lizard prince. There it is. You'll become the lizard prince. Now be the first step to becoming more than yourself and escaping this doomed existence. And with those words, my path in life was clear. I would be just like the lizard king. I would strive to reach a higher spiritual plane. I would think thoughts I couldn't imagine. I would become something more than a boy. So that night I took 3 cans of beer from the refrigerator up to my room and downed them one after the other. I started puking frothy beer all over the bathroom walls and the floor 20 minutes later. My mother came running and screamed, "What the fuck is this? Are you drunk?" "I need to reach a higher sense of self," I said, still puking. "I have to be reborn. I have to become the Lizard Prince." That's what the Lizard King said. I was talking the usual foolish talk of a drunk 6-year-old. "I don't give 2 fat monkey shits up a pig's ass what your friend the Lizard King says or thinks," my mother said. I told her that the Lizard King said that I should resist her oppressive regime. Oppressive regime? Tell that fat fucking drunk he can piss up my legs. I told her the Lizard King was my guide on my vision quest. What in fuck's sake is a vision quest? I explained that it was a journey towards spiritual expansion. Spiritual expansion? I'll expand his fucking asshole with my black dick up it. The Lizard King says, "Listen to me. Don't listen to anything the Lizard King tells you. He doesn't know anything about girls, spirit trips, or anything else." Why not? Because he's a fucking idiot who couldn't find his pecker with both hands. A flashlight and a map saying, "There's your fucking pecker hanging between your legs." He's a stupid drunk asshole who works for your father, that's all. My father came in and tried standing up to Jim. "You were looking at this all the wrong way. You can look at my twat the wrong way. We tell that burnt out fat freak that the next time he encourages our son to get drunk and transform into the Lizard Prince or Lizard Pissant, whatever the fuck he thinks he's doing here, I'm going to go down there, drop my pants, and take a monster shit in his mouth." Luckily, the Lizard King didn't show up for work the next morning. In fact, he never came back again. I, for one, took his sudden departure quite well, far better than my father did. I knew from the start that he would be like Keats' Nightingale, but a momentary, finite presence in my life that would forever be of questionable veracity. From the day forward, my father insisted that he be back, that it was the Lizard King's nature to disappear and suddenly come back again. "He'll be back, just watch. And man, will he have stories to tell," he still says. And to this very day, the Lizard King's toolbox is in the corner of my father's garage awaiting his return. And that's it. There's really nothing more to all of this than that. No grand revelations, no unexpected twists, no final gags, and no ultimate lessons. In fact, I can summarize what little I learned from the Lizard King quite easily. That all girls don't, despite what he claimed, like poetry. That 3 beers in a row was way too much for a 6-year-old to handle. And that my mother really was right. That Jim Morrison doesn't know shit and should never, under any circumstances, be trusted with mentoring a 6-year-old boy on the subject of romance or spiritual quests. Thanks.